সুপ্রিয় দর্শক সবাইকে স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি ফার্মিং ফিউচার বাংলাদেশ নিবেদিত দীপ্ত কৃষি সংলাপে পাওয়ার্ড বাই কাজী ফার্মস। দীপ্ত কৃষি সংলাপের মাধ্যমে আমরা প্রতি সপ্তাহে কৃষির নানাবিধ সমস্যা এবং সমাধানের উপায় নিয়ে আলোচনা করছি। আমরা এই সপ্তাহে আলোচনা করছি ইম্পর্টেন্স অফ স্মল হোল্ডার ফার্মার্স ডেভেলপমেন্ট ইন অ্যাচিভিং সাস্টেনেবল ডেভেলপমেন্ট গোল। এ বিষয়ে আমাদের জন্য আলোচনার জন্য আজকে স্টুডিওতে যুক্ত হয়েছেন ডক্টর সাইমন উইন্টার, এক্সিকিউটিভ ডিরেক্টর সিনজেন্টা ফাউন্ডেশন ফর সাস্টেনেবল এগ্রিকালচার। অনুষ্ঠান সঞ্চালনায় আমি আরিফ আছি আপনাদের সাথে। দর্শক, কৃষির যে পরিবর্তন এবং বিবর্তন হচ্ছে সেখানে ক্ষুদ্র মাঝারি কৃষকদের গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ভূমিকা রয়েছে, কিন্তু এই কৃষকদের ভাগ্য উন্নয়নের জন্য বিভিন্ন প্রতিষ্ঠান কাজ করে যাচ্ছে। সিনজেন্টা ফাউন্ডেশন তেমনই একটি প্রতিষ্ঠান। আমরা আজকে আলোচনা করব সিনজেন্টা ফাউন্ডেশন এই স্মল হোল্ডার ফার্মার বা আমাদের প্রান্তিক কৃষি নিয়ে আসলে কী চিন্তাভাবনা করছে, আগামী বছরগুলোতে তারা কী কী কার্যক্রম পরিচালনা করবে। আমি মূল আলোচনায় যাচ্ছি। ডক্টর সাইমন, we know that Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture has been functional globally for more than 2 decades, and even in Bangladesh you are working for more than a decade. What is the context of your work in Bangladesh, and what are the operations that you are proceeding in to change the life and livelihood of smallholder farm and farm community?
Thank you for the opportunity to answer this question and to be with you today. Our vision is a bright future for smallholder farming, and that bright future has to come with a pathway for smallholder farmers to make more money out of their farming activities. So in order to make more money, we need to have those farmers be able to access better technologies, increase their productivity, be able to sell their products from that increased productivity at fair market prices, be able to improve their incomes, and then use that improved income to invest more in their farms in the future.
Particularly in the input and other value chain
especially
system.
in inputs and in high value crop value chains. And in Bangladesh, we've been developing several models for how to do this, particularly connecting those farmers, the 80% or so of Bangladeshi smallholder farmers who do not have good market access either to inputs or to value chains. And we do that through developing entrepreneurs in low-income communities who can become change agents for the communities and lead that change with their communities of farmers. And we do that through a model we call the Farmers Hub. And each Farmer Hub is run by a male or female entrepreneur, and they serve 500 to 1,000 farmers in their community, giving them the opportunity to access improved technologies in the form of inputs, in the form of advice, in the form of digital tools, but also to access then output markets for their products. And then we look at one of the key issues, which is how do you face risks, and risks in particular increasing associated with climate change. So there we've been working a lot on smallholder agricultural insurance and de-risking, linking insurance and financing to the farmers' activities to improved inputs, improved output markets. And we've got a large-scale program which I can say a bit more about on the insurance side. And most recently we've been looking at the challenges associated with nutrition. And we're looking at how do you connect the farmers to local markets where urban people are now demanding more nutritious foods because they're being educated and guided in how to improve their diets.
So to talk about the smallholder farmer, we have nearly more than 14 million smallholder household in Bangladesh. Why smallholder farmer? Why not other avenue or other options?
If you look in Bangladesh and if you look globally across Asia, the rest of Asia and Africa, most of the farming, as in Bangladesh, is done by smallholder farmers. And if you look at where the challenges are greatest and where the productivity gaps are greatest, it's on those smallholder farms. So if we want to have a future where we continue to improve self-sufficiency, which is already achieved in Bangladesh, but move into larger volumes of exports, the only place to do that is going to be on those smallholder farms. And yet, those smallholder farms face all these challenges I was talking about a few minutes ago. So that's why we focus there. We can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in terms of reducing poverty, in terms of food security, and other Sustainable Development Goals if we focus on those smallholder farms. And as a foundation, that's our mission and our vision because it's underserved by the marketplace.
So, to talk about the smallholder farmer and their relation to achieving Sustainable Development Goal, where do you see the importance of this correlation and, cooperation or investment?
So the Sustainable Goals provide a great framework because one can talk a certain common language then between the public sector, the private sector, civil society organizations, NGOs, and donor organizations. Everybody's committed in principle to achieving these sustainable development goals. But the question is, how do you translate those in principle commitments on paper into practice? And that sustainable development goal framework then allows us to create programs which allow us to say, right, we're working on SDG 5. We have a strong commitment to gender, to diversity and inclusion. We're working on SDG 8 around climate because the climate challenge is increasing all the time. And so we have a common language and we can then structure programs accordingly. And for us, one of the most important SDGs is SDG 17, which is all about partnerships. This is not something that organizations can do alone. We learned from the United Nations Food System Summit last year that we have to work through partnerships. We have to work through coalitions. We have to work through alliances.
And build capacities of different, like partner and collaborations.
Exactly, exactly.
But in line with that, this is 2022, and we have only 8 season to achieve sustainable goal, development goal. So how do you anticipate, and what is the feasibility of it, even with the post-pandemic situation now? Is it really feasible now to achieve sustainable development goals?
I have to say I'm a bit skeptical, particularly on SDGs 1 and 2, poverty and zero hunger, because it's not a lot of time. We're halfway from 2015 to 2030 now, and we're not making the progress we need to be making. However, on the other side, I think we are getting a lot smarter about the way to bring these alliances together and these coalitions together in practice. We're seeing significant growth in our impact year on year right now of around 50% per year in terms of the number of farmers we're reaching, and well over 100% in terms of the improvements in revenue and profits and incomes that we're bringing to those farmers. And we're just one organization, but many organizations are on that scaling trajectory now. So if we can accelerate, if we can keep funding and investment focused on these challenges and not get distracted by problems in other parts of the world, then I think we can make significant progress. I still am a little skeptical whether we can achieve all the SDGs by 2030, but I think we're in a moment right now where there's this realization that this systemic approach is something that needs to be adopted by all stakeholders. We have COP27 this year for climate change. For the first time ever, there's going to be a Food and Agriculture Day at COP27. This has never happened before. This bringing together of the climate agenda, the food and the agriculture agenda, it's a huge opportunity.
Simon, you were talking about Sustainable Development Goal and all the achieving it and what are the challenges of it. But with challenge come opportunities, and what are the opportunities you see in Bangladesh in line with that dialogue and discussion?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we think can bring together tackling climate change, providing opportunities for women within the low-income households, and pathway to improved incomes for smallholder farmers is diversification of what farmers are growing. So we have strong evidence already from our programs in Bangladesh that helping farmers diversify into vegetables, for example, helping them diversify into fruits and bringing in modern vegetable technologies, modern fruit technologies, for example in mangoes, ultra-high density mango growing rather than the traditional mango tree orchards. It's a huge opportunity. You can significantly increase the productivity, you can reduce the cost of inputs, and you can produce consistent quality of products which are appreciated then by the market. Market wants safe food, they want quality food of a consistent variety. And these things can be achieved through diversification. Also, diversifying more into livestock is a great way to benefit women in the household, because traditionally women are much more engaged in livestock production. And
particularly also addressing the nutrition component, if you talk about, if you have livestock, poultry or livestock that can fulfill some of the requirement for the family or smallholder family.
So that's one area. The second area is how do we aggregate? How do we aggregate those producers so that they can present collectively to the market, get good bulk premiums for the high quality produce, rather than the traditional, I sell to one trader, that trader sells to another trader and to another trader. So we can, through aggregation models, we can delayer that supply chain so that the farmers end up with a greater percentage of the final market price. And then the third area is sustainable intensification on the farm. So how do we increase the productivity, not in a way that overdoses the use of fertilizers or overdoses the use of crop protection, but moves towards precision agriculture with digitalization and with mechanization as part of that sustainable intensification pathway.
For like better management of different input, including water and other things.
Exactly.
But all these require some sort of plan, both like short, mid, or long-term plan. Can you tell a little about that? Like, what are your short-term plan, and in long-term, what do you think about Bangladesh?
Absolutely. So in fact, our team here in Bangladesh, we have about 50 people that we employ here in Bangladesh. That team is going through a new strategy update right now, and they're actually engaging with a lot of local stakeholders. If there's anybody who wants to contact our team, I'm sure they would be very pleased to hear and receive some inputs into their strategy upgrade, which is happening over the next few months. So priority one is access to innovations. And not just innovations coming from public research, which we all know is a problem. How do we get the research done by the CGIAR or local universities and local research centers to be adopted by smallholders? But also, there's very great dynamism in the ag-tech startup space, both here in Bangladesh, in other countries such as India and Israel and many others. There's a lot of innovation, but most of those private sector innovators want to sell their innovations to commercial farmers because they think that's where the money is. So we want to develop, and we are in the process of developing, a very systematic process for testing and adapting those innovations so they can meet the needs of smallholders.
Right.
Secondly, entrepreneurship. I mentioned already the Farmers Hub model that we've been working on. How do we get massification of agri-entrepreneurship in these low-income rural
Particularly
areas?
for the next generation farmer.
Exactly. We have to make farming and agribusiness sexy and attractive to young people so that not all of them leave to go to the towns and the cities.
So, I mean, for the private sector, I mean, what do you think, like the situation in Bangladesh now, and where actually we need to look critically in the like collaborative area? Because private sector is a major stake in Bangladesh in agriculture. So how you actually envision this correlation or partnership?
It's a great question. I think for us, the main thing is to get the private sector to see that there's a value in these low-income rural communities. And that's both on the input side. So we talk to our colleagues at Syngenta on the business side. And Syngenta is now looking at, I mean, they serve maybe 10, 15% of the farmers in Bangladesh at the moment with their products. How do we get them to serve 80% of the farmers in Bangladesh? They have to believe that they can make money in serving those farmers. And at the same time, the farmers have to believe they can make money out of using high-quality products that come from Syngenta or Bayer or Yara or any of these global companies. So that last-mile model that we talked about with the Farmers Hub, how do we get that scaled up by the private sector? That's a key factor on the input side. And on the output market side, we need to get companies like Kellogg's, who we're already working with on potatoes,
right.
But we need to get all the local food companies to see that they can actually have reliable supply from smallholder farmers, from these low-income smallholder farmers, and not just source from the medium-scale commercial farmers that they traditionally source from.
So there should be a kind of like a culture of, like cooperation and collaboration with different entities. Dr. Simon, you were talking about public-private partnership. How actually we were going to differentiate it, and what is the potential, and how smallholder farmer can get benefit from it? Because most of the time when we talk about private sector, the question of fair pricing comes, and the input cost and everything is there. So what is your role and model there, and how Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Development Goal is going to contribute in that working area?
Sure. So one of the things that we're very keen on is that we get the private sector to take over our work. So in the first generation of working on these farmers' hubs, it was our teams finding the entrepreneurs, training them, providing them with mentorship, providing them with the linkages to the inputs and the outputs, and so on. Now we have what we call network managers, which are businesses that see a value in engaging with smallholder farmers through these proven networks of farmers' hubs. But still, it's small. We have at the moment about 350 farmers' hubs working with just over 200,000 farmers. How do we go from there to the millions? The only way we're going to go to that scale is through public-private partnerships, because we have to de-risk the private sector in leaning into these models.
Right.
So yes, we can find one or two large enterprises that say we're willing to invest in these models. But this is a guaranteed pathway now. We know what to do. We know how to prove the impact for all the players in the value chain, most of all the farmers, because it's a farmer-centric model.
Okay.
Farmer comes first. So funders like the World Bank and other multilateral funders, or bilateral funders like the Dutch government or the Swiss government, they can have the confidence now that they can then work with willing private sector partners to develop these models. So that's what we want to do as the next generation, is we want to build very large alliances between the public sector and the private sector that can turn hundreds of farmers' hubs into thousands and tens of thousands of farmers.
And those becomes kind of like applied hub, not very theoretical thing.
No, it's totally practical. And from our side as a foundation, we're providing merely the guidance, the tools, the methodologies. We're spending a lot of work and time now on the digital tools that can enable all of this to happen by the private sector with very minimal outside support. But they will need the de-risking to have the confidence to make those investments.
So, I mean, for the strategic discussion for like smallholder farmers, if they can get better tool, particularly in relation to climate smart, like adaptive technology and tool, where you see that Syngenta Foundation can contribute and how they can help Bangladeshi farmers who are actually affected by climate change?
Absolutely. So let me give you a couple of examples. One is soil health. Soil health is a very complex medium to intervene in. And in many cases, soils have been degraded because of monocropping of rice, for example. So how do we address that? We have to address that, first of all, by understanding what the soil properties are. So soil testing technologies. Traditionally, you do a soil sample, you take it to a lab, it takes a long time, it's very expensive, and smallholders can't afford to engage in that. But there's a lot of innovation going on right now in soil testing tools. So how do we do that? How do we enable machines to then learn from specific local tests, correlate that data with satellite data, bring it back to the village again, so that we don't have to test in every field. We can actually use smart artificial intelligence
for any geographical location.
Exactly. And that can then guide what to do to treat the soils.
Specific like prescription for particular land and crop and area. Fantastic. Any take-home message for our audience?
I think the main message that I would like to say is keep investing in the youth in agriculture. Keep investing in women in agriculture. This is one of the most important sectors to invest in for a sustainable future, not only for food security and poverty, but for employment, for economic growth, and for diversification of the economy in the future. And ultimately, if we can have resilient farming, we can face the challenge of climate change, and we can put carbon back in the soils, and we can tackle the challenges of climate change. But we have to do it together. We have to do it through these coalitions.
Thank you, Dr. Simon, for your valuable presence in our discussion. দর্শক, আমরা আজকে আলোচনা করছিলাম বাংলাদেশের যে ধারাবাহিক পরিবর্তন হচ্ছে, কৃষিতে যে বিবর্তন হচ্ছে, সেই ধারাবাহিকতা রক্ষার ক্ষেত্রে স্মল হোল্ডার ফার্মার বা যারা ক্ষুদ্র মাঝারি কৃষক আছেন তাদের ভূমিকা কতটুকু, এবং ঠিক কোন কোন ক্ষেত্রে কোন কোন বিষয়ে তারা আসলে তাদের ভাগ্যের পরিবর্তন হোক কিংবা কনজিউমার এন্ডে বা ভোক্তা যারা আছেন তাদের দোরগোড়ায় পুষ্টিকর নিরাপদ খাদ্য পৌঁছানোর ক্ষেত্রে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ভূমিকা পালন করতে পারেন, সেই প্রসঙ্গে আলোচনা করলাম। আমরা দীপ্ত কৃষি সংলাপে নিয়মিত আলোচনা করছি কৃষির নানাবিধ সমস্যা এবং সমাধানের উপায় নিয়ে। আমাদের আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠানটি প্রতি শুক্রবার প্রচারিত হচ্ছে বিকেল 5:30 দীপ্ত টিভিতে। আমাদের পরবর্তী অনুষ্ঠানে দেখার আমন্ত্রণ জানিয়ে বিদায় নিচ্ছি। সবাই ভালো থাকবেন, নিরাপদে থাকবেন। ধন্যবাদ।